Hello guys, my name is Nash. Welcome to Thursday Tales of Terror. TTT. Someone in the comment section actually suggested for me to cover a crime from the Philippines. To be honest, I really tried, but it's so difficult to get very detailed information of crime cases from there. But I hate to disappoint, so today's case would involve two Filipinos in a really gruesome murder in Singapore. Now, before I begin the story, I would like to apologize in advance if I do pronounce any names incorrectly. It is not my intention to do so. The crime happened in the year 2005, and this is a story about two best friends who came all the way from Philippines to Singapore to work as domestic helpers. They had an argument which led to a physical fight, they wrestled and pulled each other's hair, and the next thing you know, one of them died. The victim was Jane Parangan La Puebla. She was dismembered and her body parts were found in two places, Orchard Road and MacRitchie Reservoir. The discovery of these body parts led to the conviction of Jane's best friend, Guen Garlejo Aguilar. Now, if they were so close like sisters, why did Guen commit such a horrific act? Let's find out. Jane Parangan La Puebla was 26 years old at the time. She was from Nueva Vizcaya in northern Luzon, Philippines. She was married to a man named Crusaldo La Puebla with whom she had a child, a 9-year-old boy. In fact, both women were married with children. Many in the Filipino community were shocked and they had speculations as to what could have happened. Some believed that it could be money, while others think that there was a possibility of a love triangle involved. Jane and Gwen had actually met each other through a mutual friend 6 months before the tragedy happened. They quickly became close like sisters and they would plan to meet with each other during their off days, and they would often confide in each other. Gwen even said that Jane was a highly reliable friend. She would talk to Jane about all sorts of things, her problems, her deepest thoughts, any concerns that she had. Jane would always be there for her. It was said that Gwen actually had a boyfriend in Singapore. He was a local Indian man and he was described as tall and good-looking. This Indian man would often be seen hanging out with both Jane and Gwen. They would hang out at City Hall and Orchard Road, mainly this shopping mall called Lucky Plaza, which is located in the central town. And that's where the Indian man, Jane and Gwen would be seen mostly. It's a very popular hangout place for domestic and foreign workers during Sundays. Now, because the three of them were often seen hanging out together, many had assumed that the motive of the murder was due to a love triangle. But no, it wasn't because of love. Gwen had killed Jane because there was money involved. $2,000 to be exact. At 1:45 p.m. on a Friday, September 9, 2005, a street cleaner by the name of Maria found a red and blue sports bag lying at the corner of a mural wall near the Orchard MRT station exit. She walked towards the bag and started unzipping it to see if it belonged to anyone. To her horror, she saw a woman's face. The head had been put into a red plastic bag and there were two other black trash bags with newspapers. In it contained the legs and arms that were severed above the elbows. There was also a bite mark on one of the severed arms, and this bite mark would later be tested. The police were called immediately and they were shown how the cleaner had stumbled upon the bag. The case was then handed over to the investigation and forensics officers from the CID. They managed to get the thumbprint of the deceased, and through this they were able to identify the victim, 26-year-old Jane Parangan La Puebla. They also found in their system that Jane's employers had reported Jane as missing since 7 September. On the same day at 6:10 p.m, a civil servant named Alvin Lim was walking to a bus stop on Lonnie Road. When he cut in front of the MacRitchie Reservoir canteen, he found a black trolley bag. He immediately alerted the police. The police arrived and they opened the unattended bag. Wrapped in plastic bags and newspapers was the rest of the dead woman's body. The police also found a delivery sticker inside the bag. The delivery sticker was actually on one of the newspapers and it had an address written on it, so that was a pretty huge clue. Immediately, the police went to the address that was written on the sticker, and in the span of 12 hours, the police had a suspect in custody. 29-year-old Guen Garlejo Aguilar. Guen is a native in northern Luzon, Philippines. She was married to Edwin Aguilar and they had 2 young sons, aged 6 and 7. She was arrested at her employer's 8th-floor apartment at the Sunglade condominium at Serangoon Avenue 2. Gwen was evasive during the police interviews. She kept saying, I don't know, and the police couldn't get anything out of her, so they decided to go back to the apartment to look for more clues instead. Bloodstains were found on the mattress and on the floor under the bed. A tag found in the dustbin matched the brand of the black bag at MacRitchie reservoir. And not only that, they also found a work permit that had been shredded into pieces. An axe and a chopper were also found in the kitchen cabinet. Gwen was then brought back to her employer's apartment to explain about the evidence found. She told the police that the blood was hers as she had cut herself. As for the work permit that the officers found in the dustbin, Gwen claimed that Jane herself had cut it up into pieces out of frustration. She also told the police the tag belonged to a bag that her friend had bought and that the chopper and the axe belonged to her employers. But when the employers were asked about it, they told the police that they have never seen it before. Gwen continued to deny her involvement. Later on, more evidence was found. They include a bloodstained cushion, bed sheets, and clothes. CCTV footage also showed that Gwen and Jane were together. However, only Gwen was seen leaving on the 9th of September. A discarded suitcase that the police suspected was used to store the victim's body had also been found. The police also managed to track the price tags on the chopper and the axe to a department store and went through the CCTV footage. A taxi driver by the name of Jamal had driven Gwen to the Orchard MRT station and he was contacted by the police to identify Gwen. He was able to identify Gwen because he remembered that Gwen had a really large suitcase with her. With all this evidence, Gwen could deny no more. It was finally revealed that Jane had actually asked for a loan from Gwen so that she could send some money back home. Gwen gave $1,000 of her own saving to Jane and she also borrowed another $1,000 from another Filipino friend named Jenny. So in total, Gwen lent $2,000 to Jane. Later, Gwen discovered that the $1,000 given by Jenny was actually from a loan shark who charged 20% interest per month. Gwen became increasingly worried and agitated when Jane did not return the money after a few months, and because of this, she was hounded by the loan sharks. The loan sharks even threatened her that they would tell her employers. Gwen also mentioned that despite numerous attempts to retrieve the money, Jane would avoid or ignore the topic. On 7 September 2005, 2 days before Jane's remains were found, Jane had went to Gwen's place of work at the condo to cook together. Jane's employers were overseas at that time. Both of them were chatting and they talked about their problems, and that's when Gwen brought up the $2,000 debt that Jane owed her. Jane somehow became agitated when Gwen suggested that she should sell her video and digital cameras to pay off her debt. She even shouted at Gwen. So Gwen tried to calm her down, but when Gwen mentioned about selling her cameras again, they started to argue and it escalated into a fight in Gwen's room. In the room, they started pushing and hitting each other, they wrestled each other and they even pulled each other's hair. They were even grabbing each other's neck, and Gwen had also beat Jane on her right forearm. The fight left Jane's blood on the floor, on the mattress, and on the walls. Gwen then grabbed a pillow from her bed and used it to smother her friend until she stopped moving. After a few seconds, Gwen removed the pillow and started crying because she thought that her friend Jane was dead. But when Jane started to move, Gwen strangled her with her bare hands until she died. For the next 2 days, Gwen stuffed Jane's body into a luggage bag and hid it in her room. For 2 days, Gwen employers didn't know that there was a dead body in the house. 2 days later, on September 9, after her employers went to work, Gwen went to Mustafa Shopping Centre in Little India to buy herself an axe, a chopper, and black rubbish bags. She also bought a pair of canvas gloves and another pair made out of latex, which would be worn to dismember the body. She also bought a bolster, 2 pillowcases, and a bedsheet to replace blood-stained bed linen, and green wallpaper to match the one used in her employer's flat. She returned home sometime after 9:30 a.m. and started dismembering the body into 6 parts. She placed Jane's head, arms and legs in separate plastic bags and wrapped them in rubbish bags. She then stuffed the body parts and some newspapers into a travel bag. The torso clad in brown underwear was wrapped with newspapers and a black rubbish bag. After all the chopping and packing, Gwen scrubbed the blood tracers with water and detergent. Lastly, the stains that could not be removed, she covered it up with the wallpaper she bought. At about midday, Gwen took a taxi to Orchard Road and she had with her a really heavy-looking bag. She then dumped the bag next to a mural wall at the Orchard MRT station at about 12:35 p.m. I don't know why she chose that place to dump the body parts, but apparently that place is very close to a park where she and Jane used to meet every Sunday. Gwen returned to the apartment at about 1:25 p.m. About half an hour later, she put the bag containing Jane's torso into a bigger piece of luggage. With the luggage, she took a taxi to MacRitchie Reservoir. Near the bus stop along Lornie Road, she took out the small bag out of the luggage and left it next to the footpath. Her mistake was not checking thoroughly because this was the bag that had the delivery sticker on the newspaper that had her address written on it. As you have heard from my previous cases that I've covered in Singapore, Singapore has the death penalty for the murder convictions. Before Gwen's trial began in May 2006, a psychiatric examination revealed that Gwen was actually suffering from depression, which had impaired her mental state at the time of the killing. Her defense lawyers wrote to Attorney General Chambers to get the charge reduced on the grounds that the death resulted from grave and sudden provocation and because of her depression. Her charges were thus reduced to manslaughter. Dr. Tommy Tan, a consultant forensic psychiatrist, diagnosed Gwen as having masked depression. Masked depression is a condition that would have substantially impaired her mental responsibility, and therefore the death of her best friend Jane was not premeditated. Gwen pleaded guilty. Moving forward, the judge had to decide if Gwen should be sentenced to life imprisonment or a jail term of up to 10 years. During the trial, Dr. Tommy Tan presented a testimony stating that Gwen was unlikely to commit another offense. He felt that through consistent treatment and monitoring, Gwen could recover within 6 months to a year. The mayor of Gwen's hometown had also pledged to give social and counseling support to Gwen when she returned to the Philippines. On 29 May 2006, Gwen was sentenced to 10 years jail for manslaughter. Justice V.K. Raja, the presiding judge of the case, noted that Gwen could not have been able to distinguish between right and wrong due to her mental abnormality. While Gwen had intended to conceal the body after the killing, her decision to plant the body parts in two very public places strikes one as nothing short of incoherent and incomprehensible. She was hardly trying to conceal the victim's death. Gwen's conduct after the killing was baffling and showed that she had a tortured mind. The judge also accepted Dr. Tommy Tan's testimony that Gwen was unlikely to reoffend. According to Gwen's lawyer, Gwen appeared to be in good spirits and was healthy, but was tearful when recounting the events of the day Jane was killed. Jane's body was flown back to the Philippines on October 2, 2005. According to a source taken from Philstar, apparently Jane's mother and Jane's husband were at odds over the location of her wake and burial should be held. Jane's mother wanted Jane's wake and burial to be done at her hometown in Bambang, but Jane's husband wanted Jane's wake to be held in Bagabag town where the couple reside. If I'm not wrong, eventually Jane's wake and burial was held in Bagabag town because Jane, together with her younger sister, was raised in Bagabag by a relative from her father's side after her father died when she was only 3, while her mother stayed in Bangbang town. So Jane would be most at home in Bagabag. Monks can also be seen praying at the Orchard Road spot where her body was found. May Jane's soul rest in peace. And that's all I have for today's case story. Some people believe that 10 years in prison was too light of a punishment for Gwen. What do you guys think? And if you have watched my previous video on the Kallang River body parts murder, you would realize that these two tragedies took place in the same year, just a few months apart. And that's not all. The crazy thing is that both of these cases involved dismemberment, and the intention of the killing was a sum of money involved for the brutal killings, which was almost the same, $2,000. All I can say is that 2005 was definitely not a good year. If you like my content, please do give me a like and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video around. Also, you may want to click on my notification bell button just in case my uploads don't appear on your feed. Stay safe. Until then, I'll see you guys again next Thursday. Bye!